Hi everyone, I'm Paul.
And I'm Michelle.
And you're in
The Spooky Coop.
Welcome to the Spooky Coop. Hope you're not chicken.
And welcome to the Spooky Coop. Here in our high-tech spooky studios, located near the foothills of haunted New Hampshire, where background noise enhances the truly kitschy atmosphere, reminiscent of Ingmar Bergman meets Arthur J. Rank in a French cafe, we bring you this week's episode we call Lightning, Death, and Resurrection, the story of a man's near-death experience after he is struck by lightning. Let's begin. Hello, Spooky Coop. My name is Ken. I have a story to tell you that dates back to Sunday, June 14th, 1992. It was a day that changed my life. My best friend, Dale, and his wife, Lori, had invited me along to stay at Lori's family cottage for the weekend. It was located on a lake in the Muskoka region, just north of Toronto, Ontario, in Canada. Early in the afternoon, the sky was clear and the weather warm. I asked my friends if I could borrow the canoe by the dock and go for a short paddle. They said sure, and so I walked down to the dock, grabbed a life jacket and a paddle, and proceeded to disembark with the small aluminum craft. The water was calm and clear. There wasn't a cloud in the sky, and the air was still. I took my time and paddled to a bend in the lake and disappeared from my host's view. Shortly after making that turn, I felt a sudden warm wind come from the other side of the lake. I looked over and saw a hint of clouds rising just above tree level. Then I heard a very familiar clap of thunder in the form of a distant boom emerge from there as well. So I decided to turn around and make my way back. I thought I likely had enough time to get back. As I turned, the wind picked up significantly, and I began to feel raindrops. I thought to myself, how odd for the wind and rain to be felt like this, so far from the clouds that I could see in the distance. I quickened my pace and paddled faster. The wind began to increase in speed as well. By the time I was halfway back to the cottage, and still far from shore, the skies had opened up and a full-scale thunderstorm was underway. Watching from the safety of the cottage, my friend Dale told me he saw me paddling like a madman, imitating the fury of my paddle strokes as he laughingly recounted the event later on. He watched as the canoe bobbed up and down through the 2 to 3 foot waves crossing the lake. "That doesn't look very good," Lori said to her husband. "Why is he still in the water?" If she only knew how much I wanted to be on shore. Ever the hero, Dale ran down to the boathouse and popped into a small motorboat, started the engine, and opened it up in order to intercept and rescue me from the furious lightning storm that now fully engulfed me. When he reached me, he threw a rope over to me and yelled, "Hold this! I'll tow you to the shore." The other side of the inlet was lined with cottages and was in fact my quickest option to get out of danger. As I held the rope, Dale, without fully thinking it through, and perhaps a bit stressed by the lightning that was striking all around us, gunned the engine and ripped it right out of my hands. After several more tries, we managed to coordinate a bit better, and he was able to tow me and the canoe about 10 meters before the wet rope slipped out of my hands. At that point, Dale and I both agreed to simply get to shore independently, as we were both equally more vulnerable on the water. Dale sped off in the boat, and I paddled as fast and as hard as I could in the 75-pound aluminum canoe. It seemed like a dream as I paddled for the shore, but eventually I arrived. Then, the most terrifying and amazing moment of my life happened. As I stepped onto the wooden dock, while one foot was in the metal canoe and the other was on the wooden dock, a thought went through my head. God, please don't let me die like this. It would be too humorous. The second my thought ended, I was surrounded by the brightest light I had ever seen. In fact, I could see nothing else but white light. Simultaneously, I heard a hissing sound. Then, suddenly, and without any warning, I found myself standing in an unbelievable place, where I felt as if my body had no limits to its boundaries. I'm not even sure how to explain the feeling, except to say that it felt as if I was standing in the place where I stood, yet where I stood was everything I could see, and beyond that at the same time. Truly, there are no words I can find to help you understand it. Even as I tell you about it, the true feeling of it eludes me, and has become more a memory of the feeling than the feeling itself. The area where I stood was not at all solid, but also it was not gaseous. It was as if it was made of an ever-changing, gently moving, swirling, and pulsing colors of light that seemed to be the substance I existed upon for support. The colors pulsed through me. They were a beautiful, bright light consisting of warmth and feelings of peace and calm. The lights continued to brighten, yet didn't hurt my eyes. It became warmer, but it didn't burn me. I was filled with the most overwhelming sense of security, tranquility, and a sense that everything was good in the universe than I had ever experienced before, or in fact, after that moment. But before I had a chance to really wrap my thoughts around it all, a voice that came from both everywhere around me and nowhere in particular called my name. "Ken," the voice said. Its tone was smooth and had an almost hypnotic quality to it. "Yes, that's me. Who are you?" "Where am I?" "You are here, in this one place," the voice answered. "Where is this place?" I asked. "Everywhere," came the reply. "Where? This place is everywhere? So I'm in some kind of alternate dimension and I can jump to anywhere, go anywhere from here?" I remember asking. No, the voice said with a humorous tone. "Do you remember where you were before you were here?" In a moment of panic, I remembered the lightning. Yes, I do. I looked up and all around, looking for the person behind the voice. "Am I dead? Are you God?" You would expect, after watching television shows about near-death experiences. I would then see a tunnel to a bright light, some long-lost dead relatives, and God would welcome me at the pearly gates. Instead, what I experienced next was nothing I could ever have imagined. Out of the light began to form a type of brilliant pillar of distinguishable light or presence of being, like it was a part of everything, yet somehow also an individual focus of consciousness. It was beautiful and beyond words. It's hard to explain, but I knew this was the source of the voice I was hearing, along with the most incredible feeling of love, unconditional love. "You are standing in the eternal creation," the voice answered. "In this place, you are everywhere and nowhere all at the same time. You would call it a paradox. Nevertheless, it is the truth." "Is this it? Is there anyone else here but you and I?" I asked the pillar of light. "Everyone is here. This is where we all come from, and where we return after we leave physical existence. Everyone you know, and so many more you have forgotten since your life on earth, are waiting to see you again." I heard this, not in sound, but yet like sound in my head. It's so hard to describe now. Next, I remember experiencing a huge, endless, let's call it a download of data, fill my mind's knowledge and understanding. It wasn't with words, but more like concepts, where I suddenly knew, as fact, uncountable things about myself, this place I was in, and what had always been. Later, this part of my experience would quickly fade. There was simply so much all at once. but I would remember its framework. I understood the difference between understanding something in concepts rather than words. Words are so limiting. I remembered that clearly. "So, where do we go from here? What's next?" I asked. As I thought this, a massive amount of tiny white lights began to swirl all around me. It seemed like they were alive and communicating with one another in a beautiful symphony of thought and energy. The voice from the light then said, "As you now remember and know, this place is eternity, and all times are now, and everyone is waiting for you, and will rejoice at your return. Remember this." There was some kind of pause. Then I heard, "I'm sorry, Ken, but it's not your time yet." The next thing I remember is experiencing a type of jolt or shock, and suddenly I was back in my body, standing half in the canoe, half on the wooden wharf. Suddenly, as the brilliant white light from the flash of the lightning disappeared and I could see again, I heard the hissing sound that continued to grow larger and louder and transformed into the loudest, longest thunder I have ever heard. To this day, it is the loudest sound I have ever experienced. The fear traveling through me was beyond words, and it too quickly transformed into adrenaline as I realized I was alive. A single thought ran through my mind: get to shore now. Somehow, I stepped onto the wharf while grabbing the yoke of the canoe with my right hand. As I began to run, I picked the heavy aluminum canoe out of the water and threw it like a football to the shore. I remember seeing it fly through the air, rotate, and land upside down, the way a canoe is supposed to sit after docking. The paddle spun out of the hull mid-flight and also ended up beside the craft. I can only believe I must have had an enormous amount of adrenaline flowing through me to accomplish such a feat. I ran away from shore and up to some low-lying trees where I turned, squatted, and looked out over the lake. I'll try my best to describe what I experienced next. As the rain poured down in sheets, lightning struck around me every few moments, and the thunder was almost constant. I looked out over the lake and experienced the most incredible sense of peace fill every part of my being. Colors were brighter, everything was alive, emitting a beautiful energy that was unique to each element, yet somehow the same. It was like everything was connected to each other. The trees, the water, the soil I was crouched on, the clouds, even the invisible air all had a wonderful feeling of intense energy and positive splendor about it. I could have sat like that forever, but the experience began to fade after a while, and eventually Dale pulled up in the motorboat. He said he sheltered at a neighbor's cottage further down the shore, then came to look for me once the fast-moving storm had passed. He pulled up to the dock and quickly tied off the boat and turned to look at me. His eyes went wide with surprise and shock. "Are you okay? What happened to you?" he asked. Later, he would tell me I didn't look like myself at all, and there was something about my appearance he couldn't make sense of. I just seemed utterly different and beside myself, like I had been through some type of incredible event or experience. I stood up and walked over to him, with feelings and sensations that ranged from complete inner peace to an exhilarating charge of something that was running through me. I believe it may have been shock, though I still don't know for sure. I didn't say anything to him, except that a bright flash had enveloped me, and I heard a loud hiss that turned into a huge thunderclap. I couldn't explain anything anymore. I had no words that would make any sense, or that would do anything other than make me look like a lunatic. It took me years to be able to coherently speak about it to anyone. Afterwards, my life began to change. I looked at everything differently, It was as though a part of me did not make it all the way back from the place where I spoke to the light being. Like living in two places simultaneously. My understanding of non-physical existence became framed in the foundation of knowing, rather than simply believing there was more to existence on Earth. What was hardest was, and still is, my inability to explain with any coherence or accuracy what it was like in that moment in eternity, and also the level of both fear and wonder after I returned to my physical body. And I am still baffled as to why I felt no physical pain when 400,000 amps of electricity went through my body. Some have suggested it was because my foot was on the wooden wharf and it grounded me, but in truth, I just don't know for sure. There is so much I wish I could explain better, but, as I mentioned, I simply cannot find the right words that would or could properly convey such a life-changing moment so many years ago. My hope is that someone, maybe even just one person, takes these words to heart in their lifetime, and it helps them to consider they are on a journey and a mission unique to their own life. Maybe it will make some small part of the world better for people, even if it's just one person. Then it's worth it. Sincerely, Ken. So, dear listeners, what do you think of this week's episode of A Near-Death Experience? And remember, cherished audience members, we wish all of you an amazing week full of hope and wonder. Be safe, be happy. Until next time, when we see you in the Spooky Coop.